Good day everyone, we are Java Phantoms and we are going to present our system entitled Student Record System. Before we proceed with the demo of the system, I would like to give few important information that would help in understanding how our system works. First is the FXML files. FXML is a XML-based user interface markup language created by Oracle Corporation for defining the user interface of a JavaFX application. If we compare JavaFX and Java Swing, FXML files are the JavaFX counterpart of Java Swing's JForms, wherein the user interface can be edited in any way we like. Next is the CSS files. CSS is a style sheet language used to describe the presentation of a document written in HTML or XML. In other words, CSS files are responsible for the design of FXML files. Last are the controller class and the utility class. Controller classes are the ones that was responsible for the responsiveness of the FXML files, while the utility class is the brains of the application wherein the background processes such as the loading of FXML files and gathering of data from the database occurs. Now let's proceed to the demonstration of our system.
Welcome to Student Record System.
One of the objectives of our system is to help students to keep track of their records, such as attendance, grades, and violations. Our system also aims to help administrators, like professors, to easily access the records of the student. In the login page, the system will automatically determine whether the user is an admin or a student. The system will redirect the user to the admin view if the user is an admin or otherwise to the student view. Additionally, the system will also tell us if the login attempt is successful or failed. So in order to showcase these features, let's try to input incorrect credentials.
Login failed.
So as we can see, the system told us that the login attempt was failed. So now let's try to input the correct user ID, which is my PLM ID.
Login successful.
Now the system redirected us to the student view since it recognized that the user is a student. In student view, we are in read-only mode, which means that the values inside the text fields cannot be modified. The student view is divided into four different sections, namely the student profile, which includes student ID, name, sex, year level, and registration status. The second section would be the student attendance, which consists of the number of present days, number of absent days, and number of school days. The third section would be the grades section, wherein we can see our grades from different subjects or courses. We can also see our general weighted average in this section. Lastly is the student violation section, wherein we can see the number of violations that the student has and the remarks. For this example, there are no remarks since the number of violations is 0. However, the remarks change depending on the number of violations, and the maximum number of violations that the student can have is 5, and the remarks would be expulsion. Now that we have finished viewing the student view, let's try to access the admin view.
Logout successful.
So in order to access the admin view, we are going to utilize the account of our professor in object-oriented programming, who is Professor Evelyn Carolina. So her username would be Evelyn Carolino, and her user ID would be 0001.
Login successful.
Since the system recognized that the user is an admin, it automatically redirected us to the admin view. Now, the admin view is separated into two different sections, namely the student record sections and the admin records sections. Similar to the login page, the admin view also tells us whether the action that we performed is successful or not. So for example, if we try to add right now,
Append failed.
the action was failed because there are no the student ID portion is empty. So in the admin view section, in the admin view, we can search, update, add, and delete records of students or admin. So first, in the student record section, we can access the records of a specific student using the student ID. So for example, let's try to access my records. So 2021-00820 and search. So as we can see, my records are immediately displayed. So there's also an update feature which allows us to change the values in any of these records. For example, let's try to change the number of present days to 99 and my grade in calculus to 1.25.
Update successful.
So if we try to search for it again, the values must be updated. So as we can see, the number of present days is 99 and my grade in calculus is 1.25. Now let's try to access my records in the student view.
Logout successful.
So,
Login successful.
so let's look at the attendance. So as we can see, the values in the student view also updates. So we can see instead of 100, the number of present days in my record is 99. If we look at the grade, my grade in calculus 2 is 1.25 and my general weighted average was also changed.
Logout successful.
So now let's try to access the admin view again.
Login successful.
Now let's talk about the add feature. So in order for this action to be successful, the student ID that will be entered must be unique from the ones that are in the database. So in other words, two different students can have the same student ID. So for example, let's try to add a student with the same student ID as mine. So 2021-00820 and his name is John Cruz. So right now, if we try to add these records to the database, it will be unsuccessful.
Append failed.
So see, the action failed because the student ID that was entered was not unique. However, if we enter a unique student ID, let's try 001. The name would be Juan Cruz. Male, non-regular, non-regular, Now, if we try to add these records to the database, it should be successful.
Append successful.
So now if we try to search for his records, it must display in these text fields. So as we can see, the records of Juan Cruz are displayed in the text fields. So now let's try to access his records in the student view.
Logout successful.
So Juan Cruz 2021 1 2 3 4 1.
Login successful.
So as we can see, we can access his records in the student view. So attendance 100, grades all 5 flat, and violations. So as we can see here, the remarks change because the number of violations change, which is 5, and the remarks for 5 is expulsion. So now let's try to go back.
Logout successful. Login successful.
Now there's also a delete feature which allows the admin to delete all of the records of a specific students. For example, let's try to delete Juan Cruz records 001, search, let's try to delete it.
Delete successful.
So now if we try to access, if we try to search for his records, we will no longer be able to find it since it was removed from the database. And the clear function simply removes the text from the text fields. For example, let's try to search for my record first. Search. Now if we press clear function, rather the clear feature, it will automatically empty all of the text fields. So now all of the text fields are cleared. So all of the functionalities inside the student records system, student records section rather, also applies to the admin records section. We can search using the admin ID. So let's try to search for Ma'am Carolina's records 001. Search. So as we can see, the records are displayed. So we can also update it. So let's try to change her salary to say 20,000. And the number of present days is 0,000 and 100. So let's try to update.
Update successful.
So if we try to search for her records again, it must be updated. So as we can see, the values are updated. So if we try to add another admin, so it must be unique from the database like the ones in the student records system. So Now let's try to add a new admin with an admin ID 002. So his name will be Juan Cruz, male, and salary 1,000. Number of pressing days would be 100. So if we try to add this, it would be successful.
Append successful.
Now, if we try to search for his records, it will be displayed. So now let's try to access the admin view using his account. So
Log out successful.
Juan Cruz 0002.
Login successful.
Using his account, we are able to access the admin view. So there's also the delete feature, which deletes all of the records of the admin. So let's try to delete the records of Juan Cruz. So
Delete successful.
So now we are no longer able to search for his data. And there is the clear function as well. So
Log out successful.
So now that concludes our demonstration of our system.
A pleasant day to everyone. I am Joseph Nathaniel Alhambra and I'm going to discuss about the startup of the program. So for the startup and sounds of the application, we have created the SR System GUI class and the SR System FX class. The SR System GUI class is the Java FX main class wherein the main method was established and was automatically executed when we run the program. On the other hand, SR System FX class is responsible for the sound effects of the application. Another vital detail to understand is the try-catch statement. In the try-catch statement, the program will execute the statement under the try block and will immediately perform the catch block whenever there is an error that occurred during the execution of statements under the try block.
For the database, we have created two different tables, namely students and faculty, which stores the students' data, and admin's data respectively. In both tables, the ID column has unique constraint, which prevents duplicate data in that column. The admin's ID is a 4-digit code, while the student's ID is a 9-digit code. Additionally, these values are fictitious and doesn't represent the legitimate information about the users. Moving on, let's look at the utility class called SR System underscore DB Tools. In the SR System underscore DB Tools, we have 8 different methods which are commonly used inside the program. For the methods that append new student or admin information to the database, we have the add student method and the add faculty method. To delete the entire record of a student or an admin, we have the delete method. In addition, we have the value method which extracts the required information of a student or admin from the database. To further proceed with the discussion of the program, let us have Miss Austin Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. De Guzman. I am Austin Anthony and I'm going to continue the discussion regarding the SR System DB tools. Aside from the appending and deleting, we can also update the records of an admin or a student through the update student method and update faculty method. The validation method, which is primarily used in the login page, is to check if the inputted information matches the information from the database. On the other hand, we also have switch page method, which is responsible for switching scenes. The switch page method is primarily divided into 4 processes. First, loading the fxml file. Second, getting the required controller. Third, getting the CSS file. Lastly, setting the scene and displaying the scene. The fxml loader class and load method is responsible for loading the fxml file. The first switch statement is responsible for getting the required controller, while the second switch statement is responsible for getting the CSS file. To proceed, Mr. Atentia will now discuss the system's login page.
Thank you, Miss Anthony. I'm Dan Eric Atentia here to discuss about the SR system underscore login or the login page. The SR system underscore login class is the controller class of the login page. The method setOnAction method sets the actions that will be performed whether there is an action done on the node like clicking the button. When the login button is clicked, it will automatically utilize the validation method under the SR system underscore database tools class where it checks and it will play an audio or switch to a new page depending on the outcome of the validation method. These outcomes can be seen in the demo by Sir Kakal. Furthermore, the welcome method is responsible for the audio welcome message of the application where it plays the v1 underscore welcome.mp3, and the onMouse entered method is responsible for playing a high-pitched sound called s1 underscore mouse hover.mp3 when the mouse is hovered over the buttons. To carry on, Mr. Mercado will now discuss the SR system.menu.
Thank you, Mr. Atentia. I'm Edvir Mercado and I will discuss our SR system underscore menu Java. So this Java class is the controller class of the profile page, as you can see. The setValues method is a setter method that inputs the data from the database to the text fields. The attendance button will now direct you to the attendance page. Moreover, the grades button will direct you to the grades page. Lastly, the violations button will direct you to the violations page. And the logout button will direct you to the login page. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mercado. Hello everyone, I am Patrick Aragon. Let me discuss the next section of our system. The SR system underscore attendance class is the controller class of attendance page. The setValues method is a setter method that inputs the data from the database to the text fields. You will notice on the left side the profile, grades, violations, and logout buttons. The profile button will direct you to the profile page. The grades button will direct you to the grades page. The violation button will direct you to the violation page. The logout button will direct you to the login page. You may also view on the attendance page the number of present days, number of absent days, and number of school days. Now, may we call on Mr. Solis to discuss the grades page of our system.
Thank you, Mr. Aragon. Now let us discuss the SR system grades class. The SR system grades class is the controller class of the grades page. The setValues1 and setValues2 methods are what we call the setter methods, which input the data from the database to the text fields. The convert method converts the strings into float so that we can utilize the converted data to calculate the GPA of the students. The profile button will direct you to the profile page. The attendance button will direct you to the attendance page. And the violation button will direct you to the violation page. Lastly, the logout button will bring you back to the login page. And next, may I call on Miss Espejo to tackle the contents of the violation page.
Thank you, Mr. Solis. I'm Ira Almira Espejo, and to continue the discussion, the SR system underscore violations class is the controller class of the violation page. The setValues method is a setter method that inputs the data from the database to the text fields. The profile button will direct you to the profile page. The grades button will direct you to the grades page. The attendance button will direct you to the attendance page, and the logout button will direct you to the login page.
Thank you for that. As stated, I am Mr. Santasas and I am here to discuss the functionalities under the admin view class. Under this class, administrators are given many options and features to select from. This allows them to view, modify, and delete records from their students' grades, attendance, violations, and many more, or whatever else they desire to do. Looking at our first method, initialize, we have our first button, search. As seen on action, it will get the student's inputted ID and run it through the database. The name.setText function here, though it's pretty self-explanatory, sets the text in the name text field, the value that is taken from the student's database under student, which can be seen with the this keyword used the line before, and under a specific column, which in this case is 2. The other information such as gender, level, and many more follow the same principle, allowing the student's information to be displayed after pressing search. Update, add, clear, and delete are also pretty self-explanatory. They follow the same instructions as seen in search, but corresponds to their respective functions. The update action calls on the update student method as discussed earlier and runs it through, successfully changing the needed information. Add and delete are also seen with similar syntaxes, as they also almost do the same thing. The if-else segments seen in the code are to check whether the inputs are actually blank, which, if satisfied, plays an MP3 audio the programmers shows that they think would fit the program nicely. The logout and admin records action basically switches pages, as seen in the code, and direct the administrator back to their specific locations. Once logged out, you'll be headed to the login page, and once you look at the admin records, you'll proceed to the second admin view page. For the second admin view page, I would like to ask Mr. Tutanes to take the floor.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sentasas. We are now looking at the second admin view page, which is accessed by clicking the admin records. We can see how similar the features are with regards to the first admin page, which allows admins to view and modify the records of students. The features search, update, add, delete, logout, and clear are also present with the same lines of codes used in the first page. This time, however, only the admin ID, name, sex, salary, and the number of present days are shown from the database. This time also, the page is connected to the admin's database where people with admin permissions are enlisted. This means to say that whoever is added will have the authority to modify the database, while those deleted will lose this authority. To summarize, the difference between this one and the first admin page would be the database it gains access to, where this page gains access to the database named faculty, while the student record gains access to the database named students. This sums up all of the admin features, and once the logout button is clicked, it will take us back to the login system. Thank you for listening.